Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Geared Perspectives. Me, Waldo. I know it's been a while. I've been taking a break just from the travel and enjoying my time being home. Today I'm coming with you guys with another Geared Perspectives. Those who don't know me, I am currently the dedicated observer for Gears of War eSports as a total. So if you see any more Gears of War fight nights or any major eSports events, I'm the guy behind the camera. I'm also a caster and an analyst behind the scene, freelance. So, if you haven't known me, I've been around for a while. Today, we are going to be talking about spectator mode and the improvements that just came in Title Update 3. I kind of want to give a little bit of feedback before I go over the notes with you to explain why certain things happening, and also kind of explain the spectator mode as a whole and how things have been done. For the past 3 months, we've been using the Xbox One version of the spectator mode because there were major visual bugs with the PC spectator. Now, we were waiting for those to get updated. They've been updated. The changes are there. There aren't any more visual bugs as far as we know, to the testing that we've done thus far. So hopefully we'll be moving over to the PC version. Since that Play Anywhere initiative happened, we can actually join matches off of a PC and spectate at 60 frames a second. The reason that this is good is there are some limitations with trying to have dual spectators on Xbox. The Xbox console can only do up to 30 FPS on the host box, while the second spectator spot can do a full 60 frames a second, or stable 60 frames a second. So, for the most part, we've only been able to have one spectator. This may allow for a second one to be around during the game to have another point of view on something across the map. Kind of allow different picture-in-picture kind of stuff for events. We'll see how that works. We would need two really strong PCs to actually do that. I don't know how feasible that is, but we may be able to do it with a PC and an Xbox One controller. We'll see, again, how that stuff goes through. Those who don't know, we've actually been driving off of a controller and a chat pad. I have been pretty vocal behind the scenes about wanting to move over to PC so I have more control. I can use a mouse and keyboard, as well as a third-party software. I have a Razer Orb Weaver ready. I've been practicing with it to do all the major esports events because it'll ease up everything for me. Kind of had an idea how to do this when we started it, and I'm excited that we actually have these changes. They've made a lot of changes to the spectator mode. One of the big ones we'll get into is the spectator cards, and a lot of information I'll explain as we're going down this. I am only going to cover the spectator mode improvements because I'm probably the person who uses it the most out of everybody in the scene. So I do have a lot of comments on it, and I felt like this is a good time for me to make another video because it's from my perspective. So we're going to get into that. Okay, so this is the spectator mode, and we're going to cover a couple points here. The first one is the good one. I'm going to star this. Player cards have been redesigned to take up less visual space. The big thing with the spectator mode right now and why we do not have the heads-up display or the HUD up all the time that shows you which players are alive, how much damage they've taken, what weapons they're using, and like respawn times and things like that, is because the player cards took up too much space in the center of the screen. If you look from the original footage that came out early in 2016 at PAX, where they showed off escalation, anytime that the HUD was up, it literally took up all the center screen where a lot of the action's happening. And if you're watching a lot of fast-paced action in Gears of War, you are actually losing a lot of visual space. It gets really confusing. They were taking up too much. They did get reduced in Title Update 2 and moved out a little bit. They moved out further on the PC, which makes them able to be used and usable. But they've actually been redesigned to be pretty much cut out to the edges of the screen, which is a good thing for us. Also as me, because it makes the casters have the information available at all times without interfering with the action that's going on screen. It was a visual constraint, so that is a good update. Another star. This is ammo counts. Reloads are now visible in the spectator mode. So a lot of the time when we're spectating, and I've been a caster and an analyst for this, sometimes you don't know when a player has a perfect active. Like, you can do it from an audio cue, but you can't tell. You can't also tell how many rounds are in the gun that they're shooting. This is a good update for the casters to relay information about how many boom shots are left, how many drop shots are left, how many sniper rounds they have. It also allows us to analyze gameplay with things like the M bar, and it's another thing. More information that we have, the better that we can provide the information to the viewer. I like this. I don't know if other people like this. I don't know if it's turned off. Crosshairs are now available to spectators. So a lot of the time, we know when players are shooting center of the screen. You can actually tell when people miss. This is just a visual cue so that other people can see it. Viewers can understand where the shots are going and what people are aiming for. Another good thing. This is a big one. Escalation, if you have not watched it, you have to learn how to time respawns individually. We were pretty vocal about having the ability to see respawn timers on the player cards because that's accessible information, especially when your respawns go from 10 seconds up to 20 seconds. You need to be able to relay that information, how long a player is out and when they are going to be coming off respawn. It also helps us to coordinate with analysis and what teams are going to do in transition, how long the teams need to wait for their teammates to come back up. Again, more information for the casters and the viewers to understand what is going on in the game mode to better show it off to the masses. This is another good one. I can't draw a star for my life, but I'll do it. Weapons holstered onto a player's back can now be seen in spectator mode. So there's a weird visual bug that happened. You wouldn't know what gun players were backpacking. That's their secondary weapon. You're allowed one primary and one secondary, so you wouldn't know if they would have a boom shot on their back. You'd have to look at the player cards to understand that. Now we'll be able to see the weapon on the back of the player. Usability, transparency thing, not only for the casters, but for the viewers as well. I'm going to group these together because these are actually kind of important. So we've been using chat pads, so I'll show you guys now. We've been using chat pads on the controllers. There isn't a ton of remappability on the PC or on the Xbox controllers. If it's not code, it wasn't encoded in the game originally, we had to ask for it. So I was really adamant about pushing for widespread usability across the board, not only for myself but for new users, and adding multiple functions. This one is probably the 1000% we needed this because it's so annoying. This is keyboard function now removes spectator UI and the black bar together. So on the bottom of the screen in the lower thirds for the last 3 games, because it was in Gears 3, Gears UE, and Gears 4, there is a huge black bar that we try to use out. A lot of the times when I was working for Hypefest Station, we created overlays that would cover that up because it's useless information that spectators don't need to see. It tells you what cameras you're using. If you've flown the cameras enough, you don't actually need to have that information. You know from instinct where those are. It's useless information. It distracts from what's going on, and it looks bad. We were really adamant about removing that. I had the ability, if you remove the multiplayer HUD, you should definitely be able to get rid of that. We finally are, so this is definitely going to help the overall visual experience and be less distracting to everybody else. And why is it saying follow cam and all this other stuff? All we really needed to see is the stats. Everything else is kind of useless. So the huge black bar, something we've been asking for years. Thank God it's there. It has a keyboard function. It's probably going to remain off forever. I don't see anybody toggling that back on unless you don't know the cameras. If you're someone who's doing videos and stuff, this also helps that you can still see the kill feed at the bottom left screen. As I said, you could turn off the multiplayer HUD, but when you did that, you actually lost everything, like kill feed, weapons picked up, things like that. So you lost full control. So this is a very good solution. I like that. I'm gonna clear this off real quick. So again, this is the big one. That's the winner. So this is another one for usability and probably something that'll be remain on, because again, these are all grouped together. L function on the keyboard toggles player cards to the far edges of the screen or normal positioning. So in other esports, specifically CSGO, the player cards are to all the way on the edges of the screen. And that's where they should be, because you want as much information in front of the casters as possible, and also not to have something distracting with the amount of movement that happens in Gears, the amount of shots that happen. You want to be able to see as much action as possible. So the player cards have been pretty much like almost a quarter of the way in, and then they got moved out, and now they're even further out, and they should be that far. It's total for the viewability of the game, and it allows for it to be a much better viewership experience, less distracting, less things interfering with the action that's on the middle. It also allows for the casters to look at the edges of the screen instead of having to kind of deal with the HUD interfering with that. Keyboard functions. This is a cool one, and I think this one's good. This is specific for the hills. This was something that we were really pushing for, because there is a current system. There's 4 cameras in the spectator mode. If you don't know, we have player cam, which follows the player's point of view. Can't write, that's okay. Follow cam, which is a third person view. Ghost camera, where we can fly the camera however we want and kind of get cool angles. It's done for map fly throughs. And then we have called battle camera. And the current problem with the battle camera is it has weird angles. It didn't prioritize anything. It was like the set stationary cams that they had in Gears of War UE, where you can look at like certain points at the map. Like if you're looking at canals, it's that middle bridge canals. Or if you're looking at the canals angle, you're looking at an angle on canals. They don't give you a lot of information. You don't have a lot of control. But there are hills that have positions where they had stationary cameras. This is something to allow us to jump to the hill and make a decision of which player that we want to watch. Sometimes it's hard to do jump cameras to certain hill positions, and there's no way on the keyboard to actually control that. So this is an option that will allow spectators like myself to hotkey the keys and just jump to the hill location that the casters want to go to. Again, it's going to take some practice to get perfectly, but we can jump to the location and then go to the correct hills from there. Again, this is the camera we use 95% of the time, and we use I use the rest of this maybe 5%, just because the cameras have been a little wonky. Hopefully that the battle camera is utilized a little bit more, and the follow cam is a lot more for styling. I'll explain a little bit more about that, just so people understand. Let me clear this off first. So the major issue with Gears is in player camera, and this is a sidebar onto this topic. Everything's done in player camera. It's always been done in player camera the entire time we've done Gears of War, so it's been 10 years. They've introduced a follow camera, which follows the player, and it's easier to watch the wall bouncing in extreme movement. A little bit better because it's a little bit further back. There's a lot of motion blur and things. We're going to try to play with it on the PC and see if I can tone down the motion blur so that player camera isn't as intense. It's very nauseating for people that are not from the Gears of War scene. And I know everybody hates follow cam. I've heard about it. I've seen the tweets about it. I get it. There is a utilization for it. I'm working on trying to figure out how to find the time and the space for it, because it's good for showing the amount of movement that players are doing, but it's not as nauseating for newer viewers, because sometimes when the players are wall bouncing, if you watch Toy Soldier, Explosives, pretty much anybody from Optic, Identives from Splice, their movement is intense. They are constantly moving. They're constantly using the wall bouncing system where they take cover and take off cover very quickly. It's hard to follow around, and the motion blur that's around that is pretty intense. This is designed to kind of alleviate that for newer viewers. We're hopefully, like I said, we have a PC setting where we can actually play with the motion blur, and hopefully we can come to a happy medium with this. It will take some time. When we first started out, I was using a lot of it to stylize off the rounds, but there's a lot of other things that took up a lot of time with the controller, so I defaulted to player cam. We'll see how this goes. Like I said, solid sidebar about how that goes. It is definitely kind of jarring. This is the biggest issue right here, and I'm gonna circle this in and I'd star it, but okay. So in Gears of War, we have smoke grenades, and we've had smoke grenades for a long time. The players can actually, inside the game, mark a target, and they will remain highlighted through the smoke grenade. The major issue is that there is an X-ray feature on the controller that we have not been able to utilize because of the fact that it's been broken. It would only highlight dead players. So anytime there was a major smoke fight, it would be hop on someone's camera and pray that you get the right shots. You couldn't see what was going on inside the action. Now that we have this fixed, it is definitely a huge asset to us. I'm super excited about it because I actually haven't seen it functioning since the game's come out, and now that I have it, I'm probably going to use it. Let's see. So X-ray mode is a toggle rather than a press and hold. This is something that not to my preference. I would have rather had a press and hold and let go. Some people may wanted to have it a toggle. They went with the toggle for ease of use for everybody else. I personally just want to hold it down and then let go when I don't need it anymore, and because I have a lot of other things going on, like which players do I want to follow, different angles, what weapons do I want to jump to, utilizing the jump cam. It's just an extra thing to turn off, especially at the beginning of the rounds. I put up the scoreboard and then the player HUD. So this is one of those ones where I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. I probably will I'll still utilize it. I just don't like that it's a toggle feature, but that's neither here nor there. This is a big one to make my life easier. I love this one. I'm gonna give you this terrible. Hold on. This is for my sanity. Fixed ordering of players in competitive lobby into a fixed order. Okay, so if you've ever seen the lobbies when they, if you've ever watched an eSports event, especially in Gears, the players change positions on the HUD all the time. So players have a fixed position in the arena when they're sitting down. One player is sitting here, one player is sitting in seat 2, one player is sitting in seat 3, one player is sitting in seat 4, one player is sitting in seat 5. Logically, all the players should load into A, B, like into those 5 slots. Now, players do rotate their movement into the inside of the game because they play different positions on the maps. Not too big of a deal, but certain teams play directly in the same spots. This is good for me. I don't have to try to guess what player is at anyone. They'll most likely be in the same spot. If there are one on one side, because that's how it's set up, player slots are set up to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the inverse it's 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if they're in slot 1, they should logically be in slot 6 on the other side. It's how it works on the chat pad. There's 10 slots, 10 players. Hopefully it allows the inference that I don't. It's an ease of use thing for me. Super excited about it. Glad that it exists. Glad that we finally got it into the game. Huge buffer for me. And I'm sorry that my drawing skills are terrible with a mouse and keyboard. Let's see. Pressing B while holding jump cam. Now cancel. Oh, cross that out. I tried. Okay, so this one right here. Pressing B while holding jump cam now cancels the pending jump cam. Okay, so there's a lot of situations where you have the jump cam. It's a feature that's only in Gears of War. It's super dope. I love it. I think it adds a lot to the gameplay because I can go from one side of the map to the other side of the map. Sometimes there's ways where you jump into the spawn and you shouldn't be able to. This way, pressing B while holding jump cam. So if you're going to jump to somebody, you can hit B instead of having to jump to the player. You can actually cancel it out. So it cancels the inference, because otherwise they just leave this big red highlighted character and it looks really weird and people are wondering what that is. If the casters don't explain it, it just gets lost in translation. And then this is new mapping for player buttons. Okay, and I'll scroll down here. So, okay, so they added new mapping for face-specific buttons. This is actually really nice. So people that don't have, like, that want to use a mouse and keyboard, or you want to use a keypad, you can actually switch cameras now. Instead of using the D-pad, you can use face keys on the keyboard to switch them. So it's on the gamepad, you hit A, on the keyboard you hit Z, and it'll switch between player cam and follow cam, and then it explains how to switch them, blah, blah, blah. You press certain keys on the keyboard and it'll switch to ghost cam, and then other cameras will switch to the other ones. This is so that you're not using the arrow keys on the keyboard. It was a issue when we were at the playtest back in September. I brought this up that not all the keys were remappable, and for any good spectator mode, there should be remapping features enabled. This allows for an ease of use. It's pretty much everything is set on the keyboard to ZY or ZXC or AXY on the chat pad, so that you don't have to use the arrow keys, which is actually really hard across the keyboard when all the players are set through 1 through 0 on the keyboard and your flying is AWSD for ghost cam and stuff like that. So it's an ease of use so that you can switch cameras a lot easier on a keyboard. More usability, allows for other people to use the spectator mode outside of me. I honestly think that all these changes are a huge asset just to the community as a whole, and that actually will improve the spectator experience a lot. It allows more control, and that's something that I've been really pushing for behind the scenes, is that allow me to make the decisions, allow me how to more control to show off the game in the way that it should be seen. It's definitely huge improvements coming to you. Hopefully we'll have some PC spectator mode. If not, I'm pretty happy with using the mouse or using the controller for these, even though I do think mouse and keyboard will be a lot better for the overall experience, and I'll have more control over it. That's my opinion and view of this. I just wanted to give you guys my perspective on these changes. I don't actually see anything bad. The only thing I don't like is that toggle feature, but I don't really have any control over that. It's made for the masses, not just for me, even though I'm the one that uses it. But definitely liking all the changes, and hopefully gonna get to mess around with them here in the next couple days. That being said, guys, this is my long iteration of the title update 3 and the spectator mode. Please like and subscribe below. I will be making more video content here in the near future. Thanks, and have a great night.